You remember a face not clearly, but as one remembers a cathedral seen once in fog. Her eyes were not soft. They were thresholds, not invitations but demands. She did not look at you with longing. She looked through you, like a priest searching for sin, and something in you wanted to be found guilty. She stood still while you spoke, nodded while you explained, smiled while you offered your kindness like coins to a shrine that does not accept offerings. You thought stillness meant approval, but it was calculation. And later, when she finally moved, when she finally chose, she did not choose safety. She chose the edge, the man who dared not worship her, the voice that did not tremble. Do you understand now? She does not love your gentleness. She loves what it costs you to restrain your strength. She does not respect your devotion. She respects your distance, the part of you she cannot soften, the silence that refuses her. There is a chapel in her soul where men kneel to be chosen, but she does not light candles for the obedient. She waits for the one who overturns the altar. She does not truly desire the man who explains himself. You kneel, thinking your sincerity redeems you. But sincerity is the easiest form of surrender. You offer your thoughts, your dreams, your open hands, and she receives them like wilted flowers, polite, unimpressed. She wanted a cliff, not a garden, something unmoved by her tears. You misunderstood her tests as cries for help, but every silence was a question. Will you break, or will you stand? You were taught that to love is to yield, to fold yourself into something soft, understandable, forgivable. But she does not seek forgiveness in a man. She seeks something to fear quietly, not cruelty, but the capacity for it contained like fire inside a lantern. The man she remembers is not the one who bowed gently to her moods. It is the one who disappeared when she tried to mold him, not to punish, but to remind her that some spirits cannot be sculpted. She looked at you once and saw no edge, no friction, only warmth, only a man who had turned himself into an echo of her preferences. And in that moment, she knew she could love you, but she could never respect you, because you had nothing left to oppose her with. You had sacrificed the altar of your soul for her approval, and in doing so, became invisible. You did not fall because you lacked charm. You fell because you lacked resistance. A man without resistance is not a mystery. He is a mirror, and mirrors are only interesting when they distort. When she cried and you held her, she thanked you, but she did not believe you, because what she wanted was not comfort. It was to see if her sadness could move you, not emotionally, but ontologically. Would your structure bend? Would your voice falter? Would your essence crumble under her chaos? She does not trust the man who always stays. She trusts the one who could leave and chooses not to. Not out of weakness, but from an unshakable center. You think she wants to be protected, but the man she tests is not the one who guards her from the world. It is the one who guards himself from her. She wants to crash into something that doesn't apologize, a presence that does not collapse when she raises her voice. That's why she pushes. That's why she runs. That's why she flirts with contempt to provoke the line where your soul ends and your fear begins. She needs to know you are not afraid of her, not of her anger, not of her silence, not of her body, not of her absence. She watches how you handle rejection, not because she wants you gone, but because it reveals what kind of abyss lives beneath your skin. Do you chase? Do you collapse? Do you weep? Do you become vengeful, or do you turn away slowly, as if even her absence cannot unmake you? That is the moment she truly sees you. Not when you offer her your poetry, but when you say nothing. When you let the silence become unbearable and still do not beg. Because now she must face the possibility that you do not need her in the way others do. And that is the most terrifying thing a woman can feel reverence for a man who does not kneel. You confuse love with proximity. But she loves the man who walks away when it is time and does not flinch. She does not desire possession. She desires gravity, the kind of gravity that cannot be undone by desire. That is why she seeks out the unreachable, the man whose soul she cannot map, the one who speaks in riddles, not because he is hiding, but because he has depths even he cannot explain. And you are afraid to be misunderstood. You are desperate to clarify, to soften, to wrap your meaning in cushions. But a man's meaning is not in his explanations, it is in his presence. When you stand in a room, does the air change, or do you wait for her to validate your existence? You once heard her say she wants a kind man, but she lied, or rather, she did not know the truth beneath her own words. What she wants is a contained man, a man who could destroy her but never will. A man who sees through her performances, her manipulations, her beauty, and does not flinch. Because he sees something more ancient than her femininity, the eternal dance between chaos and structure. You are not here to complete her. You are here to be the wall she cannot pass through. Not to imprison her, but to set her free. Because in your unmovable nature, she sees the limits of her power, and in those limits, she feels safe. Not emotionally, spiritually. She is not seeking attention, she is seeking orientation, a star that does not flicker. That is the secret no one told you, that behind her demands is a hunger for submission not to you, but to something in you that cannot be touched. A principle, a presence, a refusal. And when she finds that in you, she can finally relax. Because she has found her opposite, not her mirror, her challenge. You speak of compromise, but she tests for absolutes. She will provoke every part of you, not to see if you love her, but to see if you are real. Because if you bend too easily, she will break you just to watch it happen. Not out of malice, but because she must know where your spine ends, where your God begins, where her power is no longer enough to control. And in that moment, when she sees your eyes unfazed when you say no, and mean it when you turn away, and she cannot follow, she remembers something she forgot, that she is not the center of the world, that there is a truth deeper than her emotions, that a man can exist not for her, but beside her, unmoved. And it is then, only then, that respect begins. Love may have come before, but without respect, love rots into resentment. She cannot worship what she pities. She cannot desire what she can command. She cannot follow what she has tamed. You once thought her coldness was rejection. It wasn't. It was a silent prayer. Give me something I cannot bend. Not because she wants to be ruled, but because she wants to know she is not the strongest thing in the room. That she can rest, that she can descend, that she can pour herself out without shattering the vessel. But you feared being the vessel. You feared being called cruel. You feared the weight of saying no. So you said yes. Again and again, until your face blurred into every man before you, and she left. Not because you failed her, but because you obeyed her. And so the altar remains untouched, the candles unlit, the prayers unanswered. Not because she does not believe, but because no one has yet dared to enter her chapel and stand. Not kneel, not beg, just stand silent, resolute, dangerous. And if you cannot be that man, she will love you, but she will never follow you. You wore kindness like a crown, hoping it would make you holy in her eyes, but she was never looking for a saint. She was looking for a storm disguised as a man. You offered patience, devotion, self-sacrifice as if her soul could be convinced by offerings alone. But every time you gave more than was asked, something inside her recoiled, because what she wanted was not your martyrdom, but your refusal, not your warmth, but your furnace. You kept asking yourself, why does she pull away when I give her everything? And the answer lived in the silence you were too afraid to sit with. You see, every time you suffered in silence to please her, You thought she would admire your endurance, but in truth, she saw a man ashamed of his own flame. You called it love, but she called it fear. You were afraid to lose her, so you let her win every war, and she lost respect for you in every victory. She did not want you to disappear inside her needs. She wanted to feel the resistance of your being. You mistook passivity for virtue. You misunderstood sacrifice as strength. But the man she is drawn to is not the one who crumbles for her comfort. He is the one who remains intact, even under fire. Not cold, not unfeeling, but sovereign. You made yourself soft, and she read it as self-erasure. And though she may have smiled, something in her soul stepped back, knowing this man would never truly anchor her. She asked you to open up, and you poured your pain into her lap like confession. But what she really meant was, will you let me close and still remain closed where it matters? Will you be vulnerable without turning to water? She wants to touch your sorrow. Yes, but only if it reveals a structure, a wound that still holds shape. She wants to see how you carry your agony without letting it consume your dignity. You collapsed beautifully, and she mourned your collapse in secret, because now she had to be the strong one. And she never wanted that. She wanted to soften beside you, not harden in your place. And so, she began to withdraw, slowly. Not because you were unlovable, but because you gave her too much room, and in that room, she got lost. There is a strange cruelty in overgiving, a quiet violence in always saying yes, because you force her to carry the weight of all decisions. You push her into the role of leader, even when she begs you to hold the line. You thought that by being endlessly agreeable, you would become indispensable. But what you became was a shadow always present, never imposing, and shadows cannot be loved, only used. She wants your refusal, your boundary, your no, not because she desires conflict, but because she needs proof that your soul is not for sale, that your beliefs will not be traded for her affection, that you are not a mirror of her moods, but a structure that holds, regardless of the weather she brings. You tell yourself she doesn't know what she wants, but she does. She wants a man who can say, "That is enough," and mean it. A man who can walk away with stillness in his steps and not look back. You think that by staying no matter what, you show strength, but what you show is fear. And she feels that fear and loses desire, because desire does not blossom in certainty. It breathes in distance, in the possibility of losing something untamable. Your pain became a performance. You thought your suffering was noble, that she would see how much you endured and reward you with permanence. But she does not love the man who dies for her. She loves the one who lives in spite of her, the one who loves her deeply and yet will not betray himself for that love, the one who bleeds without asking her to bandage him. She needs to test your God, not your smile, not your affection, your God, the thing you kneel to when no one watches. And if your God is her, she will break you just to prove you are false. She will lose interest the moment she sees her reflection on your altar, because a man who worships a woman is not a man, he is a boy, searching for a mother. You waited for her gratitude, but she gave you distance, because gratitude is not love, and you mistook her tolerance for reverence. She tolerated your devotion because it made her feel safe but not sacred. You gave her the role of your savior, your source, your son, and she grew weary under its weight. Because no woman wants to be the center of a man's world. She wants to orbit a greater fire, one she cannot control, only witness. You made her comfort your compass, and she began to resent your navigation, because every time you asked her where to go, she saw a man without direction. And even if she told you the path, she could not follow you down it, because she was the mapmaker, not the traveler. She gave you signs, not destinations, and you wanted her to lead you to yourself. But no woman can do that, and those who try become cruel in the end, not because they lack love, but because love without leadership breeds contempt. You thought you were loving her well, but you were only showing her that she had more gravity than you, and she needs to feel small sometimes, not shamed, but surrendered to something larger than herself. She wore the mask of the martyr too. She told you she needed more softness, more presence, more words. But what she needed was your distance, not physical, but spiritual. She needed to look into your eyes and see a mystery, a refusal to be fully known, a silence she cannot decipher, a part of you that belongs only to God, not to her, not to love, not to the world. You gave everything, and that was the mistake. Not because generosity is wrong, but because you gave without being asked. You offered your crown before she proved herself worthy of your kingdom, and so she doubted its value, because we only revere what we fight to reach. And now you sit in the ruins of your own sacrifice, wondering why she left. She left because she could not feel you. Not the words, not the actions, the edge, the refusal, the quiet authority that says, I love you, but I do not belong to you. That was what she searched for beneath every question, every complaint, every tear. That was the thing you buried under your obedience. She does not want a perfect man. She wants a haunted one, a man with contradictions, a man who doubts himself but still walks forward, a man who loves her but would leave her if it meant betraying his soul. That is the paradox she respects. That is the man she kneels for in the dark, not with words, but with surrender. You wore the mask of the martyr, but she only removes her mask for a king. You keep wondering why your silence never pierced her, but it did. Not the silence of distance, the silence of absence, the kind that came too late, when she had already decided you were safe, not noble, not steady, just safe. She searched you for something that would not yield and found you already bent, and so, when you fell quiet, it felt like retreat, not mystery. Your crown had already slipped by the time you stopped speaking. There is a kind of man who wears silence like a sword, not to threaten, but to carve space, the sacred distance where a woman remembers she is not the final word. You were not that man. You wore silence like shame, like a child sent to the corner, hoping your withdrawal would summon her back, hoping your absence would make her long for your presence. But she does not mourn the man she conquered. She only mourns the man she almost could not. And that is what you never understood. That the crown is not on your head, it is beneath your refusal. The quiet refusal to collapse into her storms. The refusal to explain when accused. The refusal to chase when dismissed. The refusal to convince her of your worth, not because you do not care, but because your dignity has nothing to prove. You mistake loyalty for love. But love, in her world, is a game of gravity. She wants to feel herself pulled into your orbit not because you hold her, but because you never reach. Because something in you remains unreachable, not cruel, just whole. A man who does not need her to feel like a man. She does not want a throne beside yours. She wants to watch you wear yours without apology. To see you sit in your stillness and not flinch when she challenges it, because that stillness is what steadies her chaos, and she will test it again and again until she knows it cannot be shaken. She will accuse you of coldness. She will say you're distant, emotionally unavailable, aloof. But beneath those words is a challenge. Will you crumble to win me? Will you lose yourself to keep me? And if the answer is yes, even once, she knows your soul is negotiable. And so, she walks away. Not because you were too much, but because you were not enough to hold your center. You still don't see it, that she does not respect warmth without fire. That she does not admire men who always understand her. She respects the man who listens and says, no. The one who lets her rage burn out against a wall that does not move. The one who lets her walk and does not follow. You think she wants answers, but she wants silence, the kind that echoes with consequence. The kind that says, if you leave, I will not chase. If you test me, I will not flinch. If you confuse drama with depth, I will wait until you're done performing. And if you never are, I will not mourn you. I will remain. That is the silence she respects, the silence behind the crown, the silence that holds the line when everything in her screams for control. You mistake affection for authority, but she has learned to command affection, what she cannot command. What makes her knees tremble is a man who remains composed in the presence of her fury. Do you understand now why she respected the one who said less, the one who looked at her, not with hunger, but with discernment, because in that gaze, she saw her own limits. She saw a man who would not lose sleep over her absence, a man who could vanish and still not feel lost. You were always there, too available, too soft, too grateful, and she punished you for it without knowing why. Because in the deepest part of her soul, she does not want to be loved by a servant. She wants to be chosen by a king, one who does not need her, but makes space for her because he chooses to. She respects the man who does not ask for her heart, but whose silence makes her offer it. The man who does not plead for her body, but whose restraint ignites it. The man who does not explain himself, because his presence is explanation enough. The man who does not compete with her storms, because he is the weather. She will not follow the man who bends. She will follow the man who breaks and rebuilds without asking her for permission. The man who disappears not in bitterness, but in clarity. The man whose silence is not pouting, but principled. The man who knows that no woman is worth losing your name for. You gave her your time, but time is forgettable. You gave her your attention, but attention is cheap. What she craves is your gravity, your command of yourself, the voice you do not raise, because it carries weight even when low. The truth you do not explain, because it is etched into your every decision. And now you see her with someone else, someone who speaks less, who does not worship her, who does not check in, does not reassure, does not entertain her spirals. And she leans into him. You call it unfair, but she calls it real, because she has found a man she cannot conquer, and that makes her finally relax. You do not lose women because you are not nice. You lose them because your silence comes too late, because your fire is conditional, because your boundaries are flexible, because you wear your crown like it's borrowed. And she knows, she always knows when a man has built himself around her approval. She can smell it, and it repels her. The tragedy is not that she left. The tragedy is that you never dared to be a man in her presence. Only a reflection, a reaction, a performance. And performances, no matter how polished, are never truly seen. Only watched until the curtain falls. Now sit with this, the man she respects most may not even want her. And that terrifies her, because it reminds her that desire does not equal worth, that beauty is not power in the presence of true sovereignty, that there are men who do not orbit her, and those men are the ones she dreams of in the dark. If you want her respect, you must be willing to be alone. You must be willing to lose her, not to manipulate, but to honor your own flame more than her gaze. Only then will your silence become a throne, not a coffin. Only then will your no become sacred. Only then will your presence command the reverence she cannot fake. Do not be the man who gives everything. Be the man she cannot name, the man she cannot shake, the man whose soul stands tall even when she turns away. Because in the end, she does not bow to the man who loves her most. She bows to the man she cannot move. There will come a night when she thinks of you, not with regret, but with reverence. Not for what you said, but for what you withheld. Not for how you touched her, but for how you remained untouchable. And in that silence, in that dark where no names are spoken, she will remember your eyes not pleading, not praising, but still, like a statue beneath the stars, unmoved, unchanging. And she will wonder not if you still love her, but if she ever truly knew you. That question will haunt her longer than your presence ever could.